Describe what you see in this image. This is a picture of a green frog. Recall what you learned about frogs in Domain 8, Animals and Habitats. What sound does a frog make? What do frogs eat? Where do frogs live? Have you ever seen a frog in real life? If so, describe what it looked and felt like. Please listen carefully to hear a story about a magical frog and how he overcomes a problem. If you're already familiar with this fairy tale, listen to see how this version might be different from the one you already know. What is happening in this picture? Do you notice the golden ball in the foreground? Please pay attention to the ball as we read the story. The Frog Prince, Part 1. Once upon a time, a mighty king lived in a palace in the shadow of a dark, mysterious forest. He had only one child, a beautiful little girl with long, flowing hair, and her favorite plaything was a bright golden ball that looked just like the sun in the sky. Day after day, she would run and skip under the shadow of the huge forest trees, tossing and bouncing her ball to amuse herself. She liked to pretend that her ball was indeed the sun, and that the whole wide world was hers to play with. One day, however, as she spun the ball in her little hands, it slipped from her fingers, rolled over the leafy ground, and fell, splash, into a deep well. She ran quickly to the edge of the well and peered in, but her beautiful golden toy had vanished into darkness. How do you think the princess feels? Have you ever lost a favorite toy? She began to cry loudly because she was not used to disappointment, when she suddenly heard a timid, scratchy voice behind her say, "What is the matter, princess?" Spinning around, she realized that the speaker was the ickiest frog she had ever seen. "I've dropped my ball into the well and it's lost forever," she wailed. Wailed is another way of saying cried loudly. The frog looked at her and blinked. "I could get it for you if—" "Oh, Froggy, I'd give you anything you want if you could get my lovely ball back. You could have my crown." "I do not want a crown," the frog said. "Or all my jewels," she offered. What would a frog do with jewels? He wondered. "I do not care," the princess snapped. "Just get my ball." "Well," the frog said, "I do not want jewels, but I do want a friend. It is a lonely life being an icky frog. If I fetch your ball from the dark, chilly well for you, will you agree to be my friend forever afterward, and love me, and share everything that you have with me?" Do you think the princess will agree? "Of course," the princess promised, but in her heart she thought, "Who cares what that old frog wants? He'll never leave this well anyway." The frog did not know her thoughts, however, and he dived eagerly down into the well. A few seconds later, he emerged from the water, holding the precious golden ball between two slimy, webbed hands. "It was very cold down there," the frog remarked, but the princess was not listening. Why do you think the princess wasn't listening? "Hooray!" she cried, and seizing the ball, she immediately ran back to the palace. The frog croaked after her, "Wait! I cannot run as fast as you." She ignored him, however, and considered the matter settled. Do you think the matter is settled? Why or why not? That night, however, while the court feasted, a loud knock sounded on the door. Who do you think is at the door? The princess loved visitors, so she ran to open the door. But who should stand on the palace stairs but the icky, warty frog? She slammed the door in his face and ran back to her delicious dinner on her golden plate. Behind the heavy wood door, though, she could hear him croaking, "Oh, careful, careful, Princess Fair. Promises are more than air." Fair means to be charming or otherwise pleasing. "Who was at the door, my daughter?" asked the king. "Nobody, just an old frog," she said, and she told him how the frog had retrieved her ball from the well, or how the frog had gotten her ball from the well on the condition that she would be its friend and share everything she had with it forever afterward. She thought her father would be pleased with how she had escaped the frog's demands, but, to her surprise, he frowned. "Daughter, we must keep the promises we make. What kind of kingdom would we have if we all treated each other the way you have treated this poor frog? The frog kept his promise to you, and he helped you. Now you must keep your promise to him. Go and let him in." The princess was shocked and wanted to refuse, but she could see from her father's stern look that she had to obey. Unwillingly, she got up and opened the door. The frog was still sitting patiently on the steps of the palace. When he saw the princess, he smiled happily. A smiling frog is quite a sight to behold, and bounced up and down with froggy glee. The frog bounced up and down with joy or happiness. What do you think is going to happen? You will hear the rest of this fairy tale in the next part, Part 2. At the beginning of the fairy tale, what happens to the princess's golden ball? How does the princess feel about this? Why does she feel this way? Who offers to help the princess? How do you think the princess feels when she turns around and sees the frog? What does the princess have to promise in order to get the frog to retrieve the ball? Do you think the princess intends to keep her promise? And what are some clues that tell us how she feels about her promise and the frog? What does the king say when he hears what has happened? The princess is shocked and wants to refuse, but doesn't. What is another clue that tells us why she obeys and lets the frog in after all? How do you think the frog feels when the princess lets him in the palace? How do you think the rest of the court feels about a frog being invited into the palace? Do you agree with the king that the princess should keep her promise? Why or why not? In the read aloud you heard, the princess told her father how the frog had retrieved her ball from the well on the condition that she would be its friend and share everything she had with it forever afterward. Say the word retrieved with me. Retrieved. If you retrieved something, you got it back. I retrieved my shoe from my dog. Have you ever retrieved an object that you had dropped or lost? Try to answer in complete sentences and use the word retrieved when you tell about it. What's the word we've been talking about?